Hello hyperspace, my name is Davontos and it's time to get hyped because in this video we are going to talk about the tanks in Overwatch, specifically Winston, and how I feel like Winston needs a huge buff. Now before we get into the discussion, I want to talk about the other tanks in Overwatch so we can cover what makes them tanky, what makes them a threat, what makes them seem like, you know, the big guys on the battlefield. And then finally we're going to cover Winston and feel what doesn't make him a threat, what doesn't make him feel like a tank as he should be classified as. So let's start off with like Reinhardt. With Reinhardt, what makes him a tank is he has 500 health. I believe 100 of that is armor, and 400 for that is health, which totals up to the 500. He has that giant shield, which everybody's going to get behind, which means when the shield breaks, everybody's going to protect Reinhardt when he goes into cover. He has that fire strike, which does 100 damage, which is huge if it connects. It has a 5-second cooldown time, which is really fast, so he has that projectile if necessary. He also has that charge ability. If Reinhardt's ability charges and it connects, I believe it does 300 or 350 damage. I'm not too sure, but I know his charge attack is insanely powerful. So Reinhardt is that close range tank that you don't want to get near, but if you happen to break his defenses, his team backs him up, allowing him to get to cover. On top of that, he also has that giant hammer that just devastates everybody at close range. So I feel like Reinhardt is just, you know, steadily placed, and he's doing fine in the tank category. Now, if we go over to, let's say, Zarya, I feel like Zarya is also good. I feel like she's a lot better than she needs to be. So with Zarya, she recently had a buff. Kind of like a nerf and a buff at the same time. With Zarya, her shields fill up 40% of the bubble. Before it used to be 50. However, her gun in general is just more powerful. So she has 400 health. 200 of that is shield, which means the 200 which is shield can regenerate over time. If Zarya's not taking damage, she's going to regenerate health, which makes her a priority target. If you're damaging Zarya and she gets to cover, she's going to heal back up and come back even stronger, alongside, you know, bubbling her teammates with her little gun, making her gun more powerful. So if you see a Zarya, she's going to be a threat at close range, she's constantly going to be generating health if she gets to cover, and her gun is just going to constantly get stronger until you take her out. So both Zarya and Reinhardt are threats in the battlefield, which is what makes them a tank. You know, they're a threat. Now, even moving on to Roadhog. Roadhog players have to play a little differently than they used to. Now, before these updates that made 76 stronger and Sombra a beast, Symmetra a beast, Roadhog used to just walk around the battlefield, hook anybody he pleases, and then just, you know, one shot or two shot kill them, whoever it is. But he was like the king of the battlefield. You seen a Roadhog, you want to keep your distance. However, with everybody getting buffed, the Roadhog has to stick to the shadows. He's still very powerful, but he has to be like staying in the back, staying in the shadows, and when he sees somebody, he hooks them, brings them to his lair, and then he can take them out. If necessary, you know, move around, retreat. He has that self-heal, which is huge on Roadhog's part. So, even still, with all these buffs to the other heroes and just making the other heroes more powerful, Roadhog is not as powerful as he used to be, but because he has that hook, self-heal, and one-shot kill potential, he is still a force to be reckoned with. D.Va especially is huge now. D.Va is extremely dangerous. Let's talk about D.Va. She has 600 health, and 500 of that is armor. Now, if you don't know how health, armor, and shield work in Overwatch, think of it like armor is the tough guy. Armor, even though it's 500, it takes a long time to deplete, depending on what you're being attacked by. Armor tends to drain faster if it's being hit by bombs, but bullet damage, melee damage, and everything else, it depletes very slowly. So, armor depletes very slowly, health is pretty standard, and shield depletes relatively quickly. However, shield can regenerate over time. So that's the difference between health, armor, and shield in Overwatch. With D.Va running around the battlefield with 500 shield and 100 health, totaling 600, she is a force to be reckoned with. I mean, I understand she has that huge hitbox, the huge head hitbox, but, I mean, she can fly, which is huge on her part, so she can flank, she can perform in the front line. She is just a very flexible tank. And on top of that, she has the shield projector, which can literally stop every single projectile in the game, including ultimate. So you can stop Zarya's gravity ball, you can stop High Noon, any projectile, she can stop it with that barrier. So I feel like D.Va is right where she needs to be. She is very flexible, she is very dangerous, and on the right hands, she can be a force to be reckoned with. On top of that, if you manage to destroy D.Va's mech, she pops up on foot, becoming a high value target, but if you don't take her out, another mech is soon to follow. So D.Va is huge, right where she needs to be in the tank category. However, with Winston, I feel like he's more on the weaker side. And the reason I say this is because I've been playing a lot of Winston. I believe Winston is within the top, like 10 of my most used heroes? And upon using a lot of Winston, I see like he's not as tanky as he should be. He doesn't feel like a tank. He feels more like a, I guess you can say like a buffed Tracer, I guess you can say. Because the playstyle that I tend to use as Winston, and I see most people using with Winston, is Winston's a flanker. I feel like he jumps to different areas of the map, get behind enemy lines, then when the enemies are least expecting it, he jumps on the enemies, electrocutes them, places down his barrier for cover, and then when it gets too hot, he leaps away. Kind of like Tracer, Tracer flanks, does some damage, and then teleports out. So I feel like Winston is like a tanky Tracer, but Winston's not as tanky as the other tanks, and when you use the other tanks, people gotta jump you, and you can still make a steady escape, especially with D.Va. But with Winston, you get jumped by 2 people, and most of the time you're going to be taken out, and they don't even have to be powerful people. There's been a couple of times when I'm playing as Winston and I'm jumped by, let's say, like a Mercy and an Ana, or like a Mercy and a McCree or 76. They take me out really, really quickly. And this happens because, his barrier is really, really weak. I'm not too sure on the health on his shield barrier, but it's really, really weak. Pharah can take it out in like 3 missiles, which I believe should put this health around the 300 range. But it takes like, I believe 13 seconds to cool down for you to place another barrier, so it's a very weak barrier, and it takes a while to cool down to place another one, so that's like a big down on the barrier side. On top of that, Winston is very slow moving. And, well, because he's a tank, he moves slow, but he is a very big target. He's almost as big as Roadhog, so you have a slow-moving target that doesn't have any shield, and his primary weapon, the Tesla Cannon, is weak in general. Now, I understand his Tesla Cannon can lock on to about, like, 3 or 4 people at once, but regardless on who it locks on, it's always going to constantly give this low damage. So, I feel like Winston's Tesla Cannon should be buffed. Make it not twice as powerful, just like give it like a 25% damage increase, kind of like Symmetra. Symmetra had a 25% range increase on her weapon, and you guys see how huge that changed Symmetra's playstyle. You see Symmetra players all the time, and they are dangerous. With Winston, I feel like they should give him a 25% damage increase, because even if you run into regular DPS heroes, nobody powerful like 76, just like a standard DPS, like McCree, or let's say like, yeah, let's use McCree, he's pretty standard. 76 is kind of like the higher DPS now, but with McCree, he's pretty standard. You run into a McCree, and if he doesn't flashbang you and fan the hammer, he's just regular shooting you, most of the time you would beat McCree with a Winston. However, when you retreat, you would retreat, but just barely. You would have like 100 health, maybe 150, and you gotta quickly find a new health pack. It's the same thing with Zenyatta. I mean, Winston's key is to take out squishy heroes, healers, Genjis, and so on. When you target, let's say, like a Mercy or a Zenyatta, even a couple times a Genji, most of the time they put up a really good fight, and when you retreat, if you manage to beat them, when you retreat, you're surviving like by the hair on your neck. It's very, very difficult to get, steady kills as Winston. And I know Winston's not supposed to be getting these kills. Oh god, I'm like ranting now. I know Winston's not supposed to be getting these kills. He's supposed to be poking at the enemy, but when a kill comes into play and it's time to get that kill, it's very difficult to do so. So when you're playing as Winston, I feel like you spend more time, retreating and grabbing health packs than you should flanking the enemies and pushing them where they need to be. Because the key to a flanker is to catch the enemies off by surprise and kind of like push them to where you want them to be. That's what Tracer does, that's what Winston does, that's kind of what Sombra does. So with Winston, he spends more time, you see it in this gameplay, I spend more time waiting for the shield to cool down than I do on the battlefield. I know when I do go to the battlefield, I lose so much health, I spend more time either healing up or looking for health packs. And it just doesn't make Winston feel very tanky. And even with his ultimate, his, Great Ape, whatever it's called, his Rage, it gives him 1000 health on this spot. But he's stuck at melee damage, which is okay. However, because everybody has this high DPS now, like 76 and whatnot, his Rage form isn't as dangerous as it used to be. So, with his Rage, you become, well, like twice the size of regular Winston, so you're like really tall, you have 1000 health, and you're slapping people all over the place, which is fine. You push them to where they have to be, or where you want them to be. But everybody's giving up such high damage that 1000 health drains out really quickly. You see it with Reinhardt's shield. With all this high DPS, the 1000, well, Reinhardt's shield is like half empty in like a matter of seconds. So, with Winston, I don't think they should fix his ultimate. I think his ultimate is fine. What I think they should do is make his Tesla cannon a little bit stronger. Not by much, just a little bit stronger. Either make the cooldown on his shield shorter, like instead of being like 12 or 13 seconds, maybe make it like maybe 8-second cooldown, or give his shield a little more health, so that way you can stay on the enemies just a little bit longer before you retreat. His leap is fine, he leaps great distance, and the cooldown on the leap is really short, like 4 or 5 seconds, that's fine. And the range on his Tesla cannon, I feel like you should double the range, because Winston is so big, constantly getting onto somebody's face so the Tesla cannon can connect is kind of a hassle, especially if they're like the king at close range. So if you run into, let's say, like a Reaper at close range, you just gotta straight up avoid Reapers. You can't like poke at them for a little bit and then run, because Reaper has such high DPS and Winston's so big, you're just gonna get taken out really quickly. So just increase the range a little bit. One funny thing about Winston is after Sombra, I keep saying Sombra, after Symmetra got this buff, Symmetra can actually give Winston a run for his money, and it was never like that. Before, Winston always had the upper hand on Symmetra because, well, he is a tank. But now that Symmetra has that included range, when it's Winston versus Symmetra, it's a close fight, and sometimes Symmetra would actually win. And it just, I don't know, it just doesn't feel right. It feels like Winston is a little too weak on being a tank. It's really noticeable when you actually see who people take out in the battlefield, especially if you're playing competitive. Nobody really takes Winston. Winston is always being replaced by D.Va, which is fine, they have a similar playstyle, but D.Va is more of like a head-on fighter, and Winston's more of a, like an ambush character. So people tend to take D.Va over Winston because they still have that barrier, and they still have that kind of low DPS. However, D.Va can just never has to reload, she's constantly on you, so eventually D.Va's just going to perform much better than Winston. If they add these buffs to Winston, as they did to Symmetra, you're going to see that more people tend to lean towards Winston, kind of balancing out the character select. You saw, like, back in the day, nobody was taking Symmetra, and then after this Symmetra buff, everybody's taking Symmetra. I feel like they should do the same thing with Winston. And I was actually thinking, there is one thing I feel like they should fix on Winston's ultimate. Keep his health completely the way it is at 1000, but I feel like they should increase his movement speed, because when Winston's at his rage form, he's still moving at a really slow pace. Just make him move a little faster so you can actually like chase people down and slap them to where you need to be, instead of constantly like, you know, jumping to get that little speed boost, or even leaping, like using the monkey leap. Even leaping at them to get that little speed boost to stop them where you need to be. It'll be just a little easier, it wouldn't be overpowered, and it would just be a little easier to slap them where they need to be if he had a speed increase when he's at his rage form. So that's about it for this video here. Let me know what you think about Winston in the comment section below. Is Winston a little underused? Does he need a buff? Or is he fine where he is right now? You can follow me up on Twitter at Davontos, man. And as always, I'll see all of you in the next video. This video is almost over. I'll leave you guys with the rest of the gameplay. So, have a nice day.
Victory!